Think I'll do that from now on. Good morning, everybody. It's the Pollinator, and boy, I went and kind of overcommitted myself to make a couple of vlogs. I was on a Fucker Book live feed last night, or maybe it was even this morning. I'm not sure, but I told the woman who actually did the live that I would do a vlog about trans men versus trans women unity. But I had already told my #1 fan, who I asked her what she would like me to talk about, and she wanted me to talk about living as a woman versus living as a man. So I'm going to do that one first. And I did make a few notes here to try to speak from. Because let me tell you, a lot of this stuff is scattered throughout a lot of my vlogs. So some of it's going to sound repetitive. And I hate to be redundant. I like to try to bring up fresh things. So some of the notes that I took are things that are new, as far as not being on repeat from other vlogs. So I think I've shared with a lot of people kind of what it was like in my earlier years, my childhood and my teenage years into growing older. Excuse me. How terribly awkward it was living as a woman when I wasn't a woman in my head. I did ultimately, what's the word I want? Resign to the fact that society and the world saw me as a woman, and so I didn't have any point of reference or any support whatsoever to live my truth when I was a child in the 60s, when I went from childhood to, being a teenager. Just where I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and that area is I was so sheltered that I didn't even know what a gay person was. I told somebody when I was asked, or not when I was asked, because nobody asked me what that was, but I thought, first of all, I thought gay people were only men. I didn't know there were lesbians. I didn't even know that. I thought a gay man was a man who didn't participate in sports. That's as deep as my knowledge went on the subject. I had no idea until I was a teenager exactly what a gay man was, and then I found out, close to the time I figured that out, my best friend took me to a gay bar, which scared the holy crap out of me. Anyway, I'm not going to tell that story. Stuff like that will be in my book. But, when I was young, I was mad when people referred to me as a girl. And I didn't understand why. So, I lived as a girl while, really hating every minute of it. I used to think thoughts like, I wish I was the son my father never had. I wished that I was treated that way. I did not like living as a girl at all. I didn't like to be dressed like one. I didn't like to be made to conform. And, but again, I really had no choice but to completely bury the fact that I thought I was a male in my head, and go along with what society saw me as, which was a girl, even though I couldn't stand it. Um, so, living as a woman versus living as a man has been a very humbling experience, because there are pluses on both sides. And I'm going to talk about it in terms of being a black man versus a black woman. Because right now in the transgender community, let alone the LGBTQ plus community, let alone the heterosexual cisgender community, um, there's just this huge divide and gap going on between blacks and non-blacks in that community. So I'm just, to avoid that conversation, I'm just going to speak in terms of the differences between being a black man versus a black woman, and just leave the rest of the that world out of this conversation. So so when I was living as a woman, I was prone to all of the things that women were subjected to, being sexually harassed and abused by men. Yes, I experienced both of those, and I don't even, that's probably never ever going to happen again, because the world does not see me as a woman any longer. So I don't get, cat calls. I don't get any of the stuff that women, unfortunately, have to endure in this in the society of the United States. I don't know if it's the same way in other countries, because I've never lived in other countries. Even though I have visited other countries, I still didn't see sexism in other countries when I was there. I've been to South America. I've been to Switzerland and the Caribbean islands, the Virgin Islands, and I was just too young to notice anything like that. So, but what I do notice in this particular society is just this overwhelming divide between men and women. Um, as a man, I am taken far more seriously than I did as a woman. Like when I'm out and about, and people address me as sir, I distinctly remember how, I'll just give an example, how I would go into a restaurant and sit down, and it would take the servers or the waitresses, waiters, whatever, forever to get around to my table. And, when they took my order, they didn't look me in the eye. They did not serve me as well as they do, as they do men. I get a lot more. I get treated more. What's the word I'm looking for? Attentively as a man than I did living as a woman. Let's see. But let me give you a flip side of that. And that was in the industry that I was in, which was dominated by white males. Living as a woman, I think I was able to squeak through that industry because they did not see me as a threat, which is why in that field I saw more black women in the field of information technology than I did black men. I mean, probably like 5-1, maybe even bigger than that. That they let black women into that industry a lot quicker than they did black men. At the same time, the black men that I did know in that industry, they had an easier time than I did living as a black woman. In other words, it's a well-known fact that if you're black, you got to work 10 times harder to keep your job, to keep your career, than you do if you're white. But black men did not have to work as hard as I did living as a black woman in that industry. I had to convince them, I had to convince all of these white men that I was not a threat. I also had to convince them that I was as smart as they were, which pissed some of them off. Literally, literally. I was telling this man, I think a few days ago, or maybe even a week ago, that before the internet was the internet, before the internet was the World Wide Web, there were these things called BBS. And BBS stands for Bulletin Board Services. They were local services to whatever city you lived in, and you connected with dial-up. So this thing was just text-based. There was nothing graphic about it. There was nothing visual about it. It was all words. And it had a structure inside of it and a language inside of it that I learned. And so I built this structure inside of this BBS that for women only. And there were two men that consistently tried to sneak in this structure that I made with software. And they couldn't do it. And no matter what they tried, they could not get past the gatekeeper software that I wrote for those structures for women only. And oh my God, that pissed those two guys off so bad. We used to hook up every week at a pizza parlor and just mingle. And I met these two guys at that pizza party. And one of them used to just glare at me. I mean, when I was introduced to him, I recognized his name and he recognized mine, and he just started he was just so fucking mad, He wanted, and I saw all over his face him wanting to know how the hell I built that structure to keep men out. But I just sat there with this grin on my face like, bet you thought I was slow, huh? Just because I'm black. Or not as bright, or not as intelligent. And I figured out their software in record time, whereas he had known, he was there in the beginning. He knew that software in and out, but he still couldn't figure out how to get past my gatekeepers. So he was so mad that every time I went to that pizza party, he would glare at me. I thought that was funny. So, that was my experience living as a woman. And, but at the same time, let's flip this around. Society had less fear of me, living as a woman than they do me living as a man, especially the kind of man that I am. Critically thinking, pro-black man. I see all of the subliminal messages, the literal actions of non-black people to try to dominate me, to try to put me in some kind of place, to try to make me wrong for being the same kind of man any other kind of man is. Except as a black man, I'm not supposed to buck the system. When, that's one of my missions, is to buck the system. So they see me as far more of a threat than they do women, than they did me living as a woman. So, another note I made here was to talk about male privilege, which I think women have privileges too. They're just different. So I don't necessarily, as a black man, now see, this could be completely different than white men and white women. But as a black man, I see black women being promoted into all sorts of things, from the media to to well, okay, now I'm crossing over into trans men versus trans women kind of conversation, but so I'm going to leave that alone. I, Black people, period, don't have the same privileges as whites, Asians, Hispanics, and American Indians. I mean, there's more going on for them than there are black people in general. So I don't even want to hear it when it comes to black women saying black men have privilege and vice versa. Maybe as a celebrity, yes. Maybe as somebody who has a lot of money, yes. Men in general get paid more for the exact same job. I saw that living as a woman, that men got paid more just because they were men. But I don't live in that world anymore, so I don't know what it's like, what it would be like for me now if I was still in the career that I had as a computer professional. Here's something new, is competing with the male ego, whether they be cisgender or transgender. I didn't see all that stuff when I was living as a woman. In fact, women just in general aren't as ego based, although it could be argued that trans women are versus cisgender women. I think cisgender women are much more likely to cater to a man than trans women do. Hey, and I say that not from a misogynist point of view, because I am the type of person, I am the type of man that caters to my lady. It's just I expect her to cater to me, and I'm not seeing that door swing both ways right now. What is, I told you this stuff in my mouth is driving me nuts. Another difference is being less noticeable in public, living as a man versus when I was living as a woman. Much more noticeable because there's all this sexual tension built up around being a woman, where, you know, when I move around this area or any area in the country, I'm less noticeable than I was living as a woman. You know, I don't get approached and all that other stuff. But I do get invited into the world of cisgender men that I didn't get invited into. And I don't even get invited into. They just talk to me differently than if they thought I was a woman. You know, I hear things with trans women, with men in general. Just forget transgender or cisgender. But I get to hear things that they never, ever, ever said when I was living as a woman. You know, from how we talk about women to sports to a lot of other things, that conversations start with no walls up because I am a man. And so, okay, I already covered a couple of these things. There seem to be more resources for women versus men. I'm not sure how to break that down, except to say that maybe because of this new version of feminism, and I'm not even going to, you know, look, black women have been the leaders of feminism for a long, 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 long time before white women took over that word. But by the same token, there's a lot more sources available to to women versus men. because of feminism that evolved and erupted in the 1960s. Before that, it was black women who were leading feminism, but it got changed, and I don't know what the word is for that right now. But I saw it on the internet a few days ago. What this new version of feminism is, but it's different for black women than it is white women. The dating pool shrunk as a black trans man, and I'm not even really sure how to explain that, except that I belonged to a whole bunch of lesbian groups, and when it dawned on me that I'm not a lesbian, not only did I pull out of all those groups, but I was also barred from even joining those kinds of groups because lesbians don't like men. So, or they don't want them around. They don't want, we're all the same to them. Even if we believe in women and we love women, we're still barred from being part of lesbian groups. But there is one that I belong to on Google Plus that is very welcoming and very inclusive of transgender men. There's no cisgender men in there, but there are some trans men in there, and they're very nice and friendly to us. And if a lesbian comes in there and has a problem with us being in there, the moderators of that community kick them out, which was kind of nice. It was like, oh, okay, all right, we're cool with them. And hey, that's the way it should be. Isn't the way it always is, but that is the way it should be. But my dating pool shrank because I don't want to deal with women who have issues with men. So I'm left with choosing to be with queer women, bisexual women, or heterosexual women, and I haven't mastered that yet. I don't even want to go out there. I mean, a lot of people saw the vlogs that I made where I was, blowing up about the end of my relationship with this lady who was a lesbian. And so, my best friend and my therapist are trying to push me back out there into the dating pool, and I'm going in there. I'm going into that kicking and screaming because I don't want to go. I told my therapist that I think my antenna is broke, and I told my best friend that too. That I have this terrible knack of attracting unavailable women. Either they're emotionally unavailable, mentally unavailable, spiritually unavailable, or they're physically unavailable. They're fucking 6,000 miles away or something. I just have this terrible knack for attracting the wrong kind of women. So until I figure out what's going on there, I'm very hesitant to date. Another thing I noticed is that it seems like, and it just seems this way to me. It may not be this way, but it just seems this way from my vantage point, and that is that women seem to be more cohesive than men. They seem to have each other's backs. More than men. And I don't know why that is exactly. I don't know exactly why that is. Maybe it has to do with the male ego. Perhaps it has to do with the nurturing side of women. I'm not sure exactly what that's about, except that it seems like women are more cohesive with each other than men. Black women and black men. Something that's also come up that wasn't going on when I was living as a woman was the fear of being confronted by men. there is this little fear that I have because I am a small man. I'm not one of these that can, kick somebody's ass unless I have a baseball bat in my hand or a gun or, something. I don't want to end up in confrontations with men. And because I do pass as male, I'm seen in that light. That, maybe my ego and pride and all that stuff is just as big as theirs. And, they got to strut their stuff. Which I run into this in real life and I run into it on the internet. I run into it on social media. Men that it's almost like I moved into this world of braggarts about all sorts of things that men brag about that women did not brag like that. They didn't want to chest up to you and they didn't want to start crap with you. They didn't start crap with me as a woman. They start crap with me as a man, though. It's too bad society has to be so freaking weird like that. Another thing is that black people as a whole are not privileged. We don't live in a privileged society for us, but we do get to sponge off of privileges of being male. But I still say it is no big deal. Not as big as some women say it is. But see, I'm coming from the standpoint of being transgender man versus a cisgender man. So I don't have a lot of the male-dominating, asshole, misogynistic, sexist attitude towards women that cisgender men have. So I'm seeing everything from a different vantage point there. Another difference is that, for a long time, I've been on Facebook since 2010. And what I notice more now than I did when I was living, quote, as a woman, is that I'm automatically assumed to be sexual. Some kind of sexual man. I get requests, at least 2-3 requests per week from women with all that's on their timeline is links to porno sites or them being in a porno flick maybe. I never click those links. As soon as I see that's the first thing on their timeline, I block them. But I get those kind of requests all the time when I didn't get them when I was living as a woman. I think, well, yeah, I just didn't get them. I get, requests from females like that all the time. So, and another difference is that I am more feared now. Which is a very uncomfortable feeling to automatically be feared because I'm a male. I mean, it's just automatic. That didn't exist when I was living as a woman, or perceived as a woman physically. Part of the male privilege that we do get is that our being aggressive isn't seen the same as women being aggressive. Men have all sorts of ugly words for aggressive women where that's totally acceptable to be that way as men. Except for the black transgender community. And I'm going to go into that in another video. Another thing that I went through that I've never really talked about was while I was training as a public speaker, I was urged to look more feminine, to take the edge off of my aggressive personality because they saw that. I mean, I trained for 7 months, and then I trained for 3 or 4 more months to be certified because I didn't make it during my training. But during that training, I was urged to dress down. I bought silk shirts. I had to wear a dress twice, which at the time it was annoying, and I almost quit behind that because I just knew I wasn't supposed to be in a dress. But I had a couple of breakthroughs around that and reasons why I didn't want to put one of them things on. And I had a breakthrough and showed up anyway in a dress. Then at the end of the training, we had a party in a hotel, and I borrowed a evening gown and heels and went to the graduation dressed like that. But see, by that time I had, gotten over my being pissed off about it. So I did that. I also, the first time I wore one, a bunch of women took me to Nordstrom and had me buy a dress. And it took me forever to show up to that weekend in that thing. I was wearing a trench coat. And after that Saturday evening, I went to my mother's house dressed like that. And when she opened the door and saw me standing there in a silk dress, she started crying because she hadn't seen me like that since I was a child. And said that she never thought she'd ever see me look like that again. And I said, well, take a good look. Take a couple pictures because you ain't going to see me looking like this again. I mean, I did it for the training, but I didn't commit my life to dressing like that. Because dresses just... I'm not a man that likes to wear dresses. I am not a cross-dresser. So that was not exactly fun for me to do. But I did it. Also, I have a booming voice, and that's another reason why they wanted me to dress down, was to take the attention when I'm speaking to people, to take the attention off of the fact that my voice booms and that I'm aggressive and that I'm very assertive, and not to scare the people I was doing the introduction for, was to, take it down a notch, because they were already going to be able to tell my voice boomed and that I was very out there, very fully self-expressed. In the beginning of my transition, I had a lot of anxiety around passing, which a lot of people don't understand why we want hair on our face so quickly, so fast, so quickly, and a lot of it. It's because we don't want to be misgendered anymore. And a lot of us, our features do change, but they don't change enough for people not to be confused and to continue to misgender us. So, with hair on our face, people just don't do that. And without it, I have a baby face. I can be mistaken as a woman anytime. My family still does it. People who knew me from before still do it. So, after being almost 2.5 years on testosterone and looking fully male, people still have it in their head that they thought I was a woman. So, I'm still dealing with that, and it's a headache. I've always been feisty. Always been feisty. From as far back as I can remember, I've been feisty and assertive and aggressive. It's just, as a man, it's more acceptable for me to be feisty than it was for me when I was living as a woman. You know what they call women like that? They call them bitches. You know what they call men like that? They don't call them anything, because it's acceptable to certain women, certain aspects of society, for us to be feisty. except, I'm going to say it again, and it's going to be in another vlog, except trans women. They got issues with us being feisty and aggressive and assertive and stuff like that. And I think that has more to do with them losing privilege when they became women than anything else. I don't necessarily see that as a personal attack, but I still see it as an attack. It's still trying to downplay the privilege that we gained because they're pissed off about the privilege that they lost when they transitioned to women. And then there's just one more thing I'm going to say about this, and then I'm going to close this vlog out. And that is that emotionally, it seems like men's emotions are more downplayed than women. And here's a key aspect of that is society devalues a man that cries, while it's completely acceptable for women to cry. And I think that has a lot to do with the life expectancy of men. The fact that they don't express emotions gives them a heart attack. I express emotions, but there have been times when I have done that, especially in places that I feel safe to do that in, that I quickly said, oh, I shouldn't be crying like this. I shouldn't be, and where did that come from except for my upbringing in society of the differences between men and women. Men don't cry. There's a movie called that, by a transgender man who moved around the cisgender world. He was white, but he didn't exactly say he was a trans man, but that's what he was in that movie. Men don't cry. So women cry, men don't. So emotionally, women are more coddled, I guess you could say, than men. They expect us to be rough, tough, rugged, don't express emotion, hey, I buck all of that. Because I'm going to express myself regardless. I'm just too grounded in who I am. I know who I am. I love who I am. And I don't have a problem doing that. Except in my own head, with my own programming, I'm having to deprogram something that I didn't actually know was so deeply embedded in me, which is that when I cry, and if I cry really, really the ugly cry, the heart cry, that I get on my ass. And my therapist quickly said to me, oh no, hey, men do cry. So don't feel ashamed, don't feel bad, don't feel anything. Let yourself feel whatever you feel. Don't confine yourself to the rules that have been defined by society for men. By the same token, I can be just, over the top, mad, angry too, which I express and display in some of my vlogs. So that's all I have about this discussion. I hope I addressed most of the things that I wanted to. I'm not sure if I left anything out. I made these notes really, really fast. So to my #1 fan out there who wanted me to make a vlog on this, here it is. I hope you like it. And it's Friday. It's time for the working class to wind down and relax. And I hope everybody has a blessed weekend. Pollinator out.